Right. Well, look, we'll make a start. So, as I say, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this early morning chamber webinar for our 1813 and Premier members. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Graeme Brown, who's the editor of Birmingham Live and the Birmingham Mail. So, potentially the most important media operator here in the city, our very own Rupert Murdoch, if you like. It's my big build-up for Graeme there. But certainly one thing's for sure, he's far nicer than Rupert Murdoch, but he's also very much shaping the news that we get here in the city right now. Some of you may know that both of those titles are owned by Reach PLC, formerly Trinity Mirror, and the largest sort of operator of regional national news and sort of what would have been traditional print media in the country. So massive operators. They're fellow 1813 members here at the chamber. It's great to see we've got Mark Reeves from Reach with us as well. I think the idea today is that we're going to hear a little bit about Graeme's career and how he's progressed as a journalist and up to this fantastic role now as editor of the regional titles, and also then learn a bit more about the current role and what Graeme's doing on that day-to-day basis, and also how Reach has had to change and evolve in recent years, because certainly the impact of digital media has had an effect on what would have been traditional print media, of significant effect, and the industry has changed beyond all recognition. I remember being 10 or 12 years old and going to school show and tell, talking about local newspapers and carrying great big plates where they used to sort of print the papers. And I kind of think that's probably less than 30 years ago, and it's all very, very different today. Obviously, Reach, one of the things they do is work incredibly closely with a whole host of businesses across the region, massive channel for advertising, lots of partnerships that they do as well. So we're going to hear a little bit about that from Graeme. Please do pop questions in the chat for us, and what we'll try to do is make this really, really interactive. So I'll maybe toss a few underarm balls to Graeme to get us started, and then we'll try to see where the conversation takes us. If there's any that we don't get to, then I'll pick up with Graeme afterwards and we'll look to engage. And as I say, Reach are fellow members here at the chamber, and so we can certainly share contact details if you like. And I promise that we'll get you away just before 9 o'clock, before everyone has to zoom off to their next meeting or session. But so Graeme, well, morning, and thanks for joining us.
Morning. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be involved with this with the chamber. Chamber have been brilliant friends of mine for 10 or 15 years now, and always helpful whenever we need anything. And no greater help than setting me up to say that I'm nicer than Rupert Murdoch, because I'm worried about what I could deliver on. I'm very comfortable I can deliver on that expectation.
I'm sure he's a lovely man as well. But so great. I mean, firstly, congratulations on the still relatively new role as editor of Birmingham Live and the Birmingham Mail. I mean, just tell us a little bit of your sort of journey and your background to this point. So your career to date, really.
Okay, so I've always been in local journalism. Well, actually, no, I worked on the track at Peugeot at the start, but I've always been in local journalism for the last sort of 15 years or so, and always in the West Midlands. So I started my first 4 or 5 years were at the Sentinel in Stoke-on-Trent. I started off as a business reporter and latterly a business editor there, and normal stuff, sort of finding my way, doing my training. Lots of obviously in Stoke, lots of sort of industry reporting and what we thought was a receding pottery industry, and it's still a receding pottery industry and that sort of thing. Developed to be a news reporter there before returning to business, and then in 2009 I moved to the Birmingham Post. I was there for a while. I was the deputy business editor, the business editor, and acting editor across a period at the Post. At that point, I might have met some of the people who are on here, and it's a valuable kind of time for me, because it was a time where kind of building contacts and actually getting to know people was sort of important, and it's a thing that's sort of lost its way a little bit in modern journalism. So that's always sort of served me well. There came a point where I was running campaigns a lot of the time when I was at the Post. One of the best known and the one that I banged on about most was about greater BBC investment in Birmingham, which resulted in, on paper, BBC Three moving to Birmingham. In practice, still not really doing enough. But that kind of moved me across to work at a wider role in Trinity Mirror and Midlands, running campaigns. We ran a few campaigns. My favourite of which was set up by Mark, who's also on this call. We encouraged Birmingham to take in sort of 10 times as many Syrian refugees as they wanted. Or as they planned, I should say. This is at a time where you might remember when dead bodies were washing up on our shores and sort of horrific times happening over there. The reason why I liked it was because, and again, Mark would be a similar kind of character to me. Our readers didn't. We did something because we thought it was the right thing to do, and we put pressure on the council to make a change. And I'll always be pleased we did that. We did other campaigns, probably more in a business sphere. I will tell anyone who'll listen that we were the first people who wanted the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Actually, I might stop telling them that now. But we campaigned for for Birmingham to bid for the Commonwealth Games, and I will again happily tell people that then council leader John Clancy was quoted in our first story as saying all the best to Liverpool. So that was one that we won. So anyway, I ran campaigns. That happened for a little while. For a period, I sort of got my start in being an editor as a maternity cover for a year. I ran the Birmingham Mail. I then launched Black Country Live. I spent a year and a bit in Black Country building up an audience, which is pretty large now. We do about 6 million page impressions a month in the Black Country now. And then 2 more. I became editor of Coventry Telegraph and Coventry Live. I was again only there for a year before the Birmingham job came up. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from this area. So in September, I was made the editor for Reach PLC of Birmingham, the Black Country and Worcestershire, which principally would mean, in human terms, Birmingham Mail and Birmingham Live. And I'm here today.
Well, I say, what a sort of a journey and meteoric rise as well. I mean, what does it mean to hold that role right now? And sort of, in the as you say, it's all very sort of shifting and with the geography and the different titles, but no, it's a really sort of prestigious role, isn't it, to be editor of the Birmingham titles. And I know it spreads beyond, but the Mail, Birmingham Live, I know is a relatively new sort of construct, but still, that's incredibly prestigious across the country, isn't it?
Yeah, I still have to pinch myself to understand, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on the call at work who's trying to think how did that happen at this point. It is, yeah. I mean, I am. Yes, I'm stupendously grateful for the opportunity. Obviously, we're talking about a 150-year-old news brand, and obviously, and which I'm sure we'll get into, it's gone through some sort of some changes recently, which have meant we have enormous audience, but a different kind of audience that we've had before, and there's been struggles and so on. And it's no, I should say that it's a lot smaller than it was. There's a time when being the editor of the Birmingham Mail would mean that you were overseeing 300 or 400 journalists. I'm overseeing 50 or 60 journalists, but it's brilliant. We get opportunities to make change that I've already talked about, and something that I'm going to want to do more and more and more. We're able to kind of shed light on things that are sort of problematic. It's a brilliant job for people to come to you at their wits' end, and you're actually sometimes able to help them, often not, but sometimes able to help them. But I think in the main, I was asked to write a thing about what I want to achieve from Birmingham Live and Birmingham Mail across my time here, and it's again come back to that. I have a background in campaigning journalism, and my hope is that in time I can talk about things that we've achieved, something, things where we can say this wouldn't have happened and we made that happen. So it's brilliant, but it's also what you make of it, and I'll be happy to be judged on my results in times to come.
And I suppose that's one of the responsibilities, isn't it, that comes with the role. I mean, you highlighted 2 very different but really important campaigns about refugees and affecting a change there. So you're impacting people's lives, and the Commonwealth Games, and we go and win it. Success has many fathers, but we may as well give you the credit. But that's a 750 million or thereabouts investment here largely in the city and in the region, which wouldn't be happening if the Games wasn't coming. So that's again just shows the sort of the power that you hold. I mean, Graeme, just give us. You talked a bit about the number of journalists working for you. Give us a sense of the scale of the operation right now in terms of people, and also the digital reach, and maybe just a sense of how that's changed from what you alluded to maybe 20 years ago or more, both in terms of people and readership, because I know it's very, very different now to maybe how it was a few decades ago.
Yeah, I think a useful thing to say at the first instance is a big change about digitisation, which again I'm sure we'll talk more and more and more about, is the fact that a reporter now can bring in more income than a salesperson. So across the course of time, There was a thing about journalists write things, they get people to read newspapers, and then salespeople will write advertising on there, and that will pay for the journalist. One of the things that's changed in digitisation is the fact that we have programmatic advertising, which means if we write an article, you don't need to sell adverts on it. There will be, and it annoys me as much as many of you, there will be probably 15 or 16 different adverts that will come on in various guises. So to that end, if you don't touch some of our reporters, they will pay for themselves and more. It's just useful context. This is because the nature of what a publisher is now is changing to that end. The journalists don't bring in zero income. They are still as editorially independent as they've ever been. In fact, I'll probably make the case they're more editorial independent than they've ever been in the time I've been in there. But it's just worth saying that the nature of our operation has changed. So the numbers of journalists has come down, but the number of salespeople have probably come down more. So in terms of scale, Birmingham Live has we would have about 50 journalists in our office, but I'll go into further detail. Birmingham. One more thing that's worth saying. Birmingham Mail has some staff, about 10. The Birmingham Mail is an operation that turns news that we put on Birmingham Live into a newspaper. So the Birmingham Mail in itself is me overseeing story selection and headlines and so on, and then some people who put together newspapers from content that we put online. Okay. All of our content creation is now done online. It's done by about 30 reporters that focus on Birmingham purely. 30 reporters, 30 staff. That includes news editors. It includes a couple of people who work in the area of audience. That would also take in Tamlin, who works with Business Live, which is something that we should probably dwell on. We have in our office six local democracy reporters and a seventh person who oversees their work. Local democracy reporters report purely on a said council, so they report on Solihull, Birmingham, Samwell, Walsall, Wolverhampton, and then we have Tom Dare, who also covers the mayor's area. We've got 4 people in the Black Country, which is a really kind of potent team, which, like, as I said before, we're doing sort of 5 or 6 million page impressions in there and growing. That's comparable with the Express and Star. And we've got 2 people now in Worcestershire, which is a new growth area for us. So I said all those things make up a kind of a digital mix that aims to get to a certain amount of page impressions and engagement, meaning that people actually read the stories, they don't just kind of come into them. And then that all filters down to make Birmingham Mail come out 6 days a week, writing about principally Birmingham. So a lot of those things I do about Worcestershire and the Black Country remains sort of digital only.
So it's okay, yeah. So as you say, it's fascinating how, I guess, what was a print business now it's digital led and print. Sort of there's that group of 10 people or so who are taking what's online and making it relevant for Birmingham. I mean, what's the sort of what are the stats going? Just the headline numbers in terms of people who you do reach, audience, demographics, and the like.
Okay, so again, and I always want to be held accountable for this. I don't want my measure of success to be this, but the numbers are fairly incredible. So ComScore is an independent operation that measures the audience that a news title has, and we are the 3rd biggest region in the country. The most recent ComScore, which is actually down on the month before, had about 9.5 million UK people reading Birmingham Live at some point across the month. Wow. So that would mean, if you're statistically, if you're walking down the street in any part of the country, Inverness, Lancashire, etc., statistically, you're likely to walk past. If you walk past 7 people, one of them would have been on Birmingham Live that month. Obviously, that's not really our raison d'etre. Our raison d'etre is to reach people in Birmingham, and that's our target. Across the course of a month, again, independent audited figures in September showed that 80% of Birmingham visited Birmingham Live at some point. So again, walk along New Street, and you walk past 5 people, 4 of them would have been on Birmingham Live that month. We have we also focus specifically on our loyal audience. So again, that's a monthly thing. So that could include someone who's turned up once in a month, but that side isn't really interesting us. We probably have in the area of 280,000 loyal readers. So people who would return to our brand every couple of days. Loyal readers would be people who would visit more tthan 12 times a month. So we have in the arena of 280,000 of them. We also make newspapers. We sell in the arena, I think, and Mark might chime in to correct me here, but about 12,000 Birmingham Mails now, and in the arena of 2,000 or 3,000 Birmingham Posts. But as you can see there, our audience is very digital, and our content creation, as I've mentioned before, is dictated by that.
I mean, some of those stats are phenomenal. I mean, how do you, I guess, reward brand loyalty or differentiate between those, casual viewers and that sort of 280,000 loyal digital readers, who
That's
return time after time?
Do you know what? That is the absolutely perfect question. And the answer is probably always that we don't do it enough, but we do. The way we reward our loyal readers is we make content decisions on the basis of what they do. I can give you a good example, actually. There was two court cases that were happening simultaneously a couple of years ago. One was really, really sexy. It was, and forgive me, I'm being journalistic here, but it was the evidence that was being given was particularly kind of interesting, and again, I wish I hadn't used the word sexy now, but brutal. The other one was pretty boring. It was, it's the nature of being a journalist. The other one was pretty boring and was sort of more of a kind of a family affair, really, and it was kind of a struggle for our reporters to get there. But we decided then, and have continued to say, all right, well, forget about that. What are people reading? And not what are people reading, what more people are reading the section. What are our loyal audience reading, which we can do? We've got this app called Chartbeat, which will filter down real-time people and show you what people are reading, where they've come from, any amount of detail that you want. So we make content decisions. The most important thing about our loyal audience is we make content decisions on their basis. So we write for them. All the other stuff, all the peripheral stuff, we'll do a search story, which we have this month. We did a story the other day that 1 million people read about PlayStations. We don't make content decisions for them. We wrote a story, they read it, that's great. We make content decisions for our loyal audience. So those 250, 300,000 people are the people that guide us, and we constantly listen to them. However, the reason why it's a great question, again, Mark's on, and this is something he leads. We're still keen to go further on that. The question of how do we reward that loyalty hasn't played out just yet. We're writing for them and for no one else, but we'd like to reward their loyalty better, and we'll find ways, hopefully.
And Graeme, one thing I wanted to ask as well was about video content or different, so it's not just flat words on a screen now, is it? That's one of the beauties of digital, I guess, the different ways you can interact. I mean, what are you seeing around that? And again, how does that drive viewership or engagement?
I'm really grateful you asked that, because actually we've made a change in video recently that I'd be glad that if everyone knows about it. So the video was like a massive innovation in the arena of journalism paying for journalism. So I mentioned before about how our journalists pay for themselves more than before. Well, video came in, the returns were great, and it became a way that we could pay for journalism with good journalism. So with finding videos that people wanted to watch and writing stories that encourage people to watch them. But we went too far. So and you might have noticed this, but it isn't the case so much now. But to pay for journalism through video, there was a video in every story, and they were often irrelevant. And the example we often give is you go onto a story about an inquest, and it would have a video that would autoplay that would say what's an inquest, and it would explain what an inquest was and so on. Well, for someone who's reading a story about an inquest, isn't looking for that video, and in time we realised we're annoying our loyal audience with this. So video is really important, but I just wanted to point out we're not as annoying as we used to be about it now. It's really important. We are targeted on it and so on, but it's important that we we put the video and the interest of it first, rather than it becomes a way of making money, and that's where we're at now. So absolutely, I mean, I don't want to be too high-handed.
Making money because you're getting paid per click on the video, or what's the mechanism for that?
Yeah, that's right. So I can be boring enough to tell you the amount. We would get in the arena of £15 for every 1,000 people who watched a video. That's much higher than the likes of YouTube and so on, because of sort of brand loyalty and the things we've talked about before. However, we went too far with it, and we that kind of autoplay thing meant we were showing people videos they didn't want to see. So our whole video thing now is we've got specialists that are out there finding videos that people are interested in, and this isn't worthy stuff. This is CCTV of people burgling stuff or so on. I mean, sometimes it's great. It'll be like a fly through of what a new train station is going to look like and so on. But fundamentally, people probably want to see some fairly grimy stuff.
Then you would have to make that judgment, or do you get the ability to sort of say, you know what, we're dumbing it down. This is clickbait, but hey, it's 15 quid for every 1,000 people, so you're getting put under pressure to still run it, or do you go, you know what, no, I want to shift it, as you sort of said about less annoying, but it's making sure that people can get engaged without feeling like they got to wade through too many steps to get to the nub of the story?
I mean, there's two things there. There are editorial judgments about video, and I've got a good example of that from this week that I can come to. But in the main, the thing that we've moved away from is making sure that everyone watches a video. Again, just imagine how boring what is an inquest is. So we stopped doing that now. There are editorial decisions to be made on video, and we're really quite safe with it. And I can give you an example from this week. West Midlands Police put out on their social media a video of someone being hit by a car on the motorway, and it was a video of a man standing on the motorway, a car going down, a car hitting it, and the man going about 40 feet in the air and landing down. That is readily available to anyone who wants to watch it. We didn't run that, and it landed at 7 o'clock at night, and it's difficult for us to find someone to edit video at that point. But we don't run videos of people being hit by cars and bounced up in the air. We don't do it. It's a brand issue. It's a brand issue for us that isn't the same for West Midlands Police. So we edited out, and I mean, anyone who wants proof of that, this exists now. You can go back and look. So again, it would come back to that thing. We're making decisions on the basis of our loyal audience. We have, I think, probably at the core of our loyal audience is newsletters. They're people who have come out to us, said, we want you to come into our email inbox every day. We sculpt them like we do a newspaper. And just the same as in a newspaper, we wouldn't have shown something horrific because it would have reflected on that brand. Video is a really, really good example of that. And, you know, that's not to say Birmingham Mail and Birmingham Live have always been fairly gritty titles, and I've never lost sight of that. And we put out there some fairly gritty videos, but we're trying to be the regulated arm of an absolute kind of sea of unpleasant videos.
Knowing yourself, isn't it? Just like, you know, good traditional papers would know their voice and their audience. I suppose it must be harder digitally because there's so much content, but it's really key to know who you are, isn't it?
Again, that example before just shows it's really hard to be responsible because obviously, I mean, I was talking about West Midlands Police there, but I mean, we're in effect competing with everyone who will show you videos of what, and it happens. I mean, we have to see these things. We've seen videos, and I don't really want to go into it, but all sorts of things you wouldn't want to see. We're the regulated arm of a totally unregulated internet, in which you can go and see videos of anything you want to see. But we take that responsibility importantly, and hope that kind of in time that's the value that we bring. That in a world where again you can see everything, you can go to a place where someone's thought, well, should you be seeing that? Yeah,
point of differentiation. I've got so many questions, but there's a few in the chat, so I'm gonna come to those shortly. Just a couple for me. Maybe I'll one. You talked about the circulation of Birmingham Mail and Post, the traditional print. Just wanted to get your take on what's the future of print newspapers, and is there a point in the near future where there won't be a print copy of the Post and or Mail? Also, just wanted to get your views maybe on sort of paywalls for newspapers or digital media, and what your thoughts on that. And then finally, Graeme, just, you know, before we go to the questions, so for businesses out there, what are some of the benefits of businesses partnering up or advertising through you? And does that still work in the same way where they can pick up the phone and speak to somebody here in Birmingham and sort of place some content, or is it now in the digital world sort of more centralized? I know there's a few there, but that'll give you that's, and then we'll go to the questions.
Okay, so to question one, there are no plans to close any newspapers, and I'm not breaking any trust by saying this, but yes, newspapers will close in time. The Birmingham Post and Birmingham Mail, but barring some massive improvements in the market, won't be around at some point. So that's something that we are working around. So our business has two strategic aims. One of them is grow, and one of them is protect. Protect is print, and grow is digital. Protect obviously means we don't pretend that we can grow audience in print. We could potentially launch a new Sunday title for highbrow and bring in another 1,000 or 2,000 people, but fundamentally you're fighting against a kind of falling tide. So our print operation is about kind of consolidating and making it so that it's cost effective. So I can't come up with a better answer other than probably they will close, but they aren't. There's nothing in the pipeline with that to happen. We're trying to gear up so that we're able to deliver news to people in Birmingham who want it when that happens. Question two, paywalls. So I'm not anti-paywall. The problem that we've got is that we're, I quoted some numbers to you before that showed that we're very populist. We are desperate to get people to read our content, and our whole business model is about get huge numbers of people, hopefully also huge numbers of loyal and local people, and realise value of that from that. There are things that potentially we could do that might in time go behind a paywall. There's a new operation called The Athletic, which is a sports journalism operation that has people behind a paywall. I don't know. I don't think it will work, but I like the idea that it would. I don't think journalism should be free. I see the things that people, we have spectacular journalists in our operation. Our investigations editor, Jeanette Oldham, Jane Haynes, our people and politics editor. We've got Jonathan Walker, who's in London, who's constantly in contact with all of the MPs there. The local democracy reporters we talked before. We are delivering really, really worthy things, and they should be paid for. So I'm not against it. We're not a paywall business particularly, and we've seen and enjoyed the benefits of our rivals investing in paywall. So that would have to kind of develop. But we are developing a sense, I think, online that people are more prepared to pay for stuff. So that could come about. In terms of how people can interact, there have been some changes. The big change in our industry is the fact that we now know what people read. And the example I often give was when I was at the Birmingham Post. Every month we would do a story about interest rates, and we would get we would speak to Birmingham Chamber as the primary business organisation in the area about what they think of various other people, PwC and so on, and we put it out there. And every month we do it, and for 48 consecutive months it was exactly the same thing. That interest rates stayed at 0.5%, but they might be thinking of changing them. Then we put it online, and no one read it. And I mean no one, as in zero. And again, I referenced you before. We wrote a story the other day that in a day 1 million people read. No one, not one person, read the story about interest rates. So it's a big thing that we know what people read now. There's two sides to that. It makes it more difficult. That the nature of kind of PR and kind of fluff things that businesses might have been able to get through before. I guess things about kind of charity donations or an appointment piece or so on. The problem is now we're all on the same side. We're in the area of, can we actually get people to read this? And that's the only value that we could ever deliver to you in the first place anyway. But the answer is yes. We've got teams, and the most important one I think is our content marketing team. So they're a team that work across our social media platforms, which generate. I mean, our one Facebook page alone that generates in the arena of 40 million interactions across the course of a month. We've got about 12 of them across our social media.
The Birmingham titles, yeah.
But Birmingham Live, Black Country Live, Worcestershire Live. Okay. We've got lots of Facebook groups. Tamworth Herald, Sutton Coldfield Observer. We've got Lichfield Mercury. So we have all of that platform. We've got our website, which brings in, like I say, all the people I said, but in the main, about between 50 and 60 million page impressions a month. So we've got masses and masses of people there. We were also able to kind of tailor it to certain areas. So whereas before, we couldn't have promised you that we could get something in front of the eyes of 50,000 people from Sutton Coldfield. We can now do it. We can. So we've got all sorts of possibilities. The thing is that the nature of it has changed. So our interplay with the PR industry, as an example, is just changed massively. And whereas I don't know, we might have used 5% of the press releases we sent before, it's probably more like 0.5% or less now. So people can, and of course I would say this, they need to deal direct more. If you deal with our content marketing team, they are journalists who can develop content that's relevant to what you want to do, but they can also guarantee audience in a way that PR companies would tell you they can but can't.
And what about advertising? Good old fashioned sort of, as you say, okay, so I'm a business in Sutton, but that interests me, your localized reach. Can I stick a skyscraper ad or an ad on a page? How do I go about sort of leveraging and piggybacking on what you've got there with that audience reach? There's a lot of that going on. What are the options, I guess? Yeah.
So not, I mean, it does. Yeah, we've got local salespeople who deliver local options to you. They're also able to sell across the network. So as an example, if one of your businesses would have an interest in, and we're everywhere. So if one of your businesses is only interested in reaching in people in Sutton Coldfield and Harrogate, or Sutton Coldfield and Inverness, we can kind of deliver that, and the same person can deliver it. But they are a local person living in Birmingham. They can book adverts in the Birmingham Mail or Birmingham Post. They can tailor to what you want. They can help to generate again content marketing, which would deliver a kind of guaranteed audience across the board. But yes, they are there, and they are underused because I don't think the market has possibly caught up with sort of where we're at now. In that we've never before across those 150 years been an organisation that can now guarantee eyes in Sutton Coldfield. We could have said people from Sutton Coldfield read the Birmingham Mail, go on page 5 and you'll see it, and it worked. That's why people came back. We can put you in front of 50,000 people from Sutton Coldfield, advertising in things, pre-roll on video, all sorts of things. And if I can say, I know this and can quote it. But to reference a comment from earlier on, there's no commercial pressure on me whatsoever. I used to be a business journalist, so I know how businesses work. So I'm spilling this out to you. But and I'm grateful to Mark for this. I'm not measured by anything that has a pound sign on it. So I wouldn't want to give you the impression my metric is getting people to read it and it being important.
Yeah, and I suppose which is great actually. I think it's really, really key, isn't it? Because you've got to have that editorial integrity. Yeah. I think that certainly, and I'm sure a lot of people on here as well. While it's weighing it up, but the reach is so impressive. It's a bit like, how do we piggyback on that and use that as a really effective channel for businesses to promote their wares? And in fact, Tom in the chats just said, how do we get in contact with these salespeople? Which is a sort of question that I'm sure you'll love. And whether or not, I'm sure Mark.
It's definitely the sort of it's definitely the question that Mark will love. Well, we can put you in touch with them then. And I mean, that's what there's loads of things. I'm really glad we're working more closely with the chamber, but amongst them is just the opportunity for us to kind of spread that work. Because there are, as I said before, one of the costs of what's happened with us, again, being a business that had 500 journalists has now got 30 to 50, is we can't talk about it enough. And that's one of the pressures I feel like as the editor now is we've been too quiet. We've been too focused on digital growth and so on, and not forgot, but just haven't talked enough to people about. But this is here, this is happening. I've talked to you frankly about the future of local media and so on. But as it happens, we're moving before the market moves and so on. So brilliant question, and we will definitely get those details to you.
And I think that's one of the things that we're keen to do, because we're talking with businesses all of the time, and the world is constantly changing. I think the last 8 months and COVID's accelerated that and maybe spun it out in slightly different ways than people were thinking beforehand, or just sort of accelerated the change. But I think, and that's one of the key things we want to draw out, that what reach, what you and your organisation, how you've adapted to that change, because it's been really significant, and businesses wrestle with that. How do we stay relevant in the modern world? How are we sort of not holding on? No one wants to be sort of caught in that Kodak situation, do you, where suddenly digital cameras come along and you're got those little sort of film rolls, and it's fascinating how the pace with which all media, but certainly sort of local print media's had to change and adapt. There's a couple of great questions in the chat. I know a few have already been answered here. There was one around some of the ads making it difficult to navigate Birmingham Live, and sort of making the experience clunky and frustrating, which I think has been covered off and you touched on as well. But Gainos in the chats asked a really good question, actually. There was a piece in the Observer on Sunday, which I read, which amongst other things quoted Birmingham gets ignored. That worries me. And the point here is that that's been the case for 50 years or more under governments of all colour rosettes, and worries us, and should worry all those whose job is to challenge the powerful political, cultural and media organisations that ignore this great city. Graeme, as a obviously proud Brummie and campaigner, what more can the Mail do to change that?
I'm really brilliant. Yeah, it is a great question, and I read the story in the Observer myself, and was conflicted about it because I don't think we should ignore. There's one brilliant stat in there that everyone knows about, which is about the level of unemployment in a city. There's also some terrible stats in there, we all know Birmingham is much the biggest authority in the country, so it's the top of all numbers. So without context, those things mean nothing. In general, my take from that Observer piece is really relevant to our conversation today, which is that it's seen as acceptable for a national title to send someone to a city the size of Birmingham, in a conurbation the size of the West Midlands, to Birmingham for a day, to talk to the mayor in the city centre, to go to Druid Heath, come back, and to consider that a justification to measure the success of a city like Birmingham. If we just go on to say, I mean, I'd say that'd be trite to do it in, and I'm not as annoyed as I'm sounding here. I would say that'd be trite to do that in Scunthorpe, but this is Birmingham. This is Birmingham, which is the capital of the West Midlands. It's in fact the capital of the Midlands. It is it's the most important. I don't pretend like it's more important than London, but it's the most important place outside of London. It's the most developed economy and so on. And absolutely, to come back to that point, it concerns me that it's got to that point. That wouldn't have happened about Manchester, because the Guardian has a northern correspondent and actually deals with the kind of the undercurrent of what's happening in the north and so on. That's partially why I'm so pleased to be getting back closer to the chambers, because I think we, and by we I mean me, need to speak louder about our region. There's so much more that unites the West Midlands and the Midlands than there is the North, and yet our colleagues have jumped ahead of us, really, and assisted by George Osborne and others in their kind of power at the North rhetoric. I mean, I think to join it back to the thing about COVID, that we've pressed reset on the economy, and who knows where we're going to go now. But when we start up again, the Midlands should talk as one more, and that the Observer piece only served for the reasons I've just outlined to really solid that up in my mind, really, which is that. I've been reporting in Birmingham for 15 years, and we're still at a point where a national sends one person to Birmingham for a day and judges it. We are, again, 1.1 million in an area of conurbation of 2.5 million in the Midlands area, which is 6 million. We haven't got the right amount of discourse, and it brings me back to that campaign about the BBC and so on before. Yeah. It isn't right. There aren't enough Brummie voices, and we're at play for trying to address that.
I think it's a great question. I read the piece. I must admit, I thought, I don't like to say it was lazy. Maybe it's a bit unfair, but I kind of did think that. And I sort of got to the bottom, and I didn't realise it had finished. I kind of kept trying to scroll to find the rest of it. It felt sort of a bit half-baked. But I think you're right, isn't it? It is about trying to get our elbows out. I mean, it's something we feel very passionate about at the chamber. We're fortunate, again, that we're independent, so in effect we can say what we want, and we've got our own channels. We've got a former employee of
yes,
of the Birmingham Post and Mail editor or sub-editor, I think, so John, who's on the call with us, and so we get that and try hard to strike the right tone and to say it as it is, and to shout out all about that's great about this city and region. And I can't help thinking as well that the Commonwealth Games, in under 2 years now, is a great chance, because we talk about not enough people knowing how much the city's changed in the last 10 years, and it's transformed, hasn't it? And and I think actually that challenge is bigger in the country, in the UK, than it is necessarily worldwide. I think people have a better perception of us around the world than they do in London or Bristol or Manchester, which is slightly crazy. But the games is a set piece, and there'll be a nice big studio sort of probably in Centenary Square showing off a wonderful backdrop, and the sun's going to shine, and it will all be a bit of a feel-good sort of factor, and it's a real chance to reset some of that image, isn't it, and the narrative of the city.
I think that's right, and I know I'll keep answering with too many words. So, but briefly, again, I was there at the infancy of that Commonwealth Games thing. And the thing about the Commonwealth Games was it came at a time of, like we've still got now, of sort of austerity and people not wanting to invest, and it was almost like reminding Birmingham, we've got everything. You could have the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham tomorrow. In Liverpool, they were talking about floating a sports venue on the Mersey or something, stuff like that, pie in the sky, £1 billion things. We get the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham tomorrow, and it would be good. And sometimes Birmingham needs reminding of that, that we don't. It's all already here. We've got the NEC, the NIA, Birmingham City Centre. We've got all of those sports venues. We've got millions and millions of diverse people, 170 different nationalities, all relevant to the Commonwealth.
Well, at least one great football stadium, Graeme, haven't you, in Villa Park?
I'm editor of the Birmingham Mail, so I've got all the time in the world for Aston Villa.
Graham's a Baggies fan, if anyone's wondering.
I am indeed.
So we've all got to feel a bit sorry for him at the moment. But Graeme, just what are the big challenges facing the city and the region? Do you feel sort of, outside of COVID, I guess, but just in general, and what you get to see, that helicopter view that you get of all that's going on, where do you kind of go, this really, really worries me? Maybe that sort of campaigning instinct.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, one of the campaigns I've run that, or sort of mini campaigns I've run that were less popular, is I would contest that Brexit's a bigger issue for our region than coronavirus. Yes, I went there and talked about Brexit. I don't need to tell you all. We are a exporting economy. I loved talking about the fact that we had an export surplus with China, and I remember talking to a business colleague of mine who happened to piggyback on Bristol's business visit to China, and how effectively it felt like they were kind of giggling at him. The world doesn't. When you talked before about how people see Birmingham, the world doesn't giggle at Birmingham, and for the reasons that you're all more familiar with than me, really, that we have for centuries done stuff that other people can't do, built things that other people can't make. We actually ran the world at one point. So I worry about Brexit. It's not a thing that we're able to kind of communicate well with our audience, because it's such a divisive thing. But I mean, I worry massively about Brexit and about what it means for our jobs. And I think it's become a point now where it's going to happen. So that's more a thing about, from our perspective and from the perspective of the Chamber and so on, about, all right, so this is happening. What are you doing for the Midlands, or for the West Midlands, or for Birmingham? But what are you doing? And I think that's really important. And I think that starts now. I keep saying inside our business that coronavirus is stopping a reason not to do stuff, because it's here, and you've got to kind of crack on. So now it's sort of boring, but I think it's relevant that I think Brexit and the outshoots of Brexit and the way that the country is federalised and invested in is the biggest thing.
I think you're right. It's a tough topic. We know that people are don't really want to engage. In many ways, and sort of 4.5 years, people are sort of pretty fatigued. We're seeing, we do a lot of international documentation processing, and we're seeing inquiries really ramp up probably over the last month. And I'm sure my colleague Grace will be able to highlight in the chat. I know we've got another webinar, sort of make sure your business is prepared for Brexit, coming up in the next week, which people do want to find out more, then click on. But we're going to see the impact, certainly, we'll see a short term, in the first 6 months of the new year, and I think slightly sort of longer. And of course, that's coming just at a time when we'll still be feeling the impact of COVID on the economy, and really starting to see that dig deep. So there's a bit of a convergence there, which is troubling. But yeah, I mean, at least it's nearly over, hey? Whatever way you voted, say 4.5 years ago. But that's an interesting take on it, Graeme. I was just going to also ask about the local democracy reporters, because obviously, the city council, the combined authority, the mayor's role, and we've got a mayoral election, hopefully, or probably next year in May, which was delayed from this year. Just give the people who are watching sort of a bit of a sense about those local democracy reporters, how they're funded, and why it sort of matters to what content.
So the local democracy reporting scheme formed part of the last BBC charter renewal, and it basically put funding in to pay for reporters at councils in almost all councils across the country. So again, I listed some local ones before. So we still have people that work directly for us, not part of the local democracy scheme, that report on councils. So Jane Haynes being the best example for us. But these are people who go every day, sit in all of the major committees and meetings and so on, and report on them. They report into a wire that then gets kind of published, but on mass generally. The way the local media is set up, it sort of works. Obviously, the only place really you read the stuff that Solihull one writes is in BirminghamLive, and similarly there are some areas like Samwell and Walsall that are kind of contested, so you might see them in two different places. So anyway, they're there, and they do the churn. They make sure that there's nothing said in chamber that is written. They obviously, to that end, have a bit more of a BBC slant in that they can't be quite so punchy and controversial as us. So we happy to kind of take a line on stuff. I talked about the Syrian refugee thing earlier. A local democracy reporter can't write that. it can't say Birmingham City Council is letting you down and letting down the families of people who are being flushed onto our shores. They can't do that because it's the BBC. But what they can do is, like I say, every cough and spit. So it's been tremendous for us and an ongoing challenge to make sure that we get a sufficient amount of audience to it. But it means nothing gets said in our chambers without us being there now.
Which is crucial, isn't it? That's one of the key roles of the media, is to hold
absolutely
the powerful to account. And I know it's a sort of frequent debate. We've seen it over recent sort of years play out in the national media and the Leveson inquiry and et cetera. But for me, it's always been absolutely key that there's that, you know, that accountability there for those who would otherwise abuse the power. And we've seen that, you know, sort of, you know, time immemorial, haven't we, really?
Yeah, absolutely. They need to be listened to, and obviously, I mean, in areas like ours, you know, this slightly predates me, but you know, obviously there was a time when Sandwell was made up of 72 councillors, which 71 were Labour and 1 was independent. If we're not going to scrutinise what happens in that council, who is? So it's key, and yeah, I mean, they're fantastic journalists, and we're built. You know, you can see in our local audience statistics really that, you know, that they write stuff that's important. It's not read by lots and lots of people, but it's important to the people who read them.
Just if there's any final questions for Graeme, then please do pop them in the chat. I know there's one here just about digital TV and exploring getting a digital TV channel, I should say, not a digital TV. And Mark's replied, local TV equals money pit, which I think says all we need to know about that. And one final thing I wanted to ask Graeme was just about any sort of campaigns that you've got coming up. And I know sort of Christmas is typically a time when you would have something to really sort of focus on and to focus your audience on as well, to do some good and add some value.
This is why we get on, Paul, because you asked all the questions I want. So our Christmas campaign launches in paper tomorrow, and this is the only metric, sorry Mark, that I care about between now and the end of the year. Is our Christmas campaign is to buy toys for homeless children at Christmas, and specifically every homeless child as it stands that will be in B&Bs, council B&Bs, so, you know, the ones you might have seen us write about before, down Hagley Road and so on, where they're all kind of trapped into one messy room and sharing kitchen services and so on. Every homeless child in a B&B in Birmingham, and also working with Women's Aid with their hostels. This accounts to about 1,100 children. We are with our readers looking to buy a gift for every single one of them. This all centres around an Amazon wish list, and Grace has details and hopefully can share it with you. You can just log on onto this Amazon wish list. You can see a list of things, and the things equate to the ages of the children, the homeless children. So we've got tablets for kids who are over 11, spirographs for kids who are 8 to 11, and so on. This is the thing that matters to me at the moment. So anyway, so our Christmas campaign is big, and we're looking for business partners with it, really, because we sort of think it'd be a good opportunity in a digital world where people aren't seeing each other to offer something back to the community, but also with staff. You know, they can't buy presents for each other, so this might make an alternative for a Secret Santa. So anyway, that's the Christmas campaign. Campaigning is going to be important to us coming on. Another thing down the line is houses of multiple occupation. And I think Birmingham is a little bit of the capital in the country about houses of multiple occupation. We get lots and lots of contact about them. We are going to be investigating that more and putting pressure at the end. And this is a relevant thing to say. One of the things about digital journalism is it's very easy to convert from journalism to action. As an example, with HMOs, in time, we will probably create a petition and encourage people to sign a petition. And when that petition gets to 100,000, then in Parliament they have to discuss whether or not to debate it. That's a bit similar in terms of content marketing and your website. In that, you know, it's
just
not
on that. So just explain why that matters. Houses of multiple occupation.
So houses of multiple occupation are, as they say, places where lots of poor and struggling people live, and there are we're in the infancy of this, but there are tens of thousands of them of people living packed into homes across the area, and they are paid for at the public purse on the basis that the people in there are receiving some form of help. the thing we'll be looking into is, are they receiving some form of help? You know, is it actually serving a purpose, or is it a way for landlords to make a lot of money out of the public purse and not get a return? And we haven't concluded our investigation now, but what we know is that there are more of them in Birmingham. Again, a bit like that figure before, where there are more of everything in Birmingham, but there's a lot of it. Our readers contact us all the time. Our local audience reads about it all the time. So we know that it's important. So we'll be investigating it. We'll be investigating the people who own a lot of homes. We'll be investigating how the council interact with them, and what the end return is for these people, and throw it out there.
Again, trying to play a role in making the city a better place and improving lives for those who don't have a voice otherwise, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
And just to go back quickly to the Christmas campaign. So the idea being there that readers can go online and almost see that there's a tablet and there's a X pounds, and they could give X towards that, and then do Reach match it, or is there some way? How does that piece work? Sort of from
we've got a charitable fund, and we'll be donating towards it. So absolutely, and it'll be when I talked about sort of an internal thing in businesses, we'll be encouraging our staff to do that, but also we'll be putting direct money into it to buy them ourselves. And the thing I love about this is it's called Grant a Christmas #Brumwish, and it's direct. So this is, a grandmother living in Brierley Hill can buy a toy. This is the toy. It goes to 4-year-old homeless child. It's not put money into something and we'll do something with it. It's literally, you buy it, we'll wrap it and give it to the person. So I'm really hopeful with it, because it's the sort of thing you can only do through digital journalism. You couldn't do that in a newspaper. So it's using it to its kind of fullest extent. But as you can probably tell, I'm a bit obsessed by it. It'll be launching today digitally. It'll be on our front page tomorrow.
Okay, so there's a chamber exclusive there for everyone who's tuning
there
in.
Is,
which is great. So Graeme, mindful of time, so we'll close things up. I just wanted to give you the sort of opportunity really for any final thoughts and sort of messages, I guess, to the chamber community, the business community here, and messages around how we could sort of all work together in 2021. I know that that's certainly one thing we are going to do with yourself, Mark, Reach, is just you remember. So just like every organisation and every business who's involved, kind of say sharing stories and best practice. But from your point of view as the newly installed editor, sort of any messages out there to leave?
Yeah, well, I think the key message is to say that we are here, that we haven't been doing enough to play a tangible part in the area of local discourse that's probably most important to yourselves, really. So that issue of the regions and the power of Birmingham and the West Midlands and what we can do with it. So we're here. We want to play a much bigger part with the chamber, and I think, Paul, you and I have talked before that we have aligned goals in this regard. So it's not that speaks not at all to what other people can do for us, but what we're going to start to do better. To know that we're there, we've quoted some numbers before, and some of them have context and some of them don't. But I'm gonna take it from me. We've got an enormous audience and a huge local audience, bigger than we've ever had, and that can be of value to people. And the bigger we can make our operation, my staff is a metric of the number of the amount of audience we can get. So the bigger commercial success we can make of our news title, the more journalists we can have, the more pressure we can put on Parliament and others to make decisions that are better for the West Midlands. So to encourage people to have a look and speak to our staff and talk to friends and so on, because again, I've answered every question honestly today. We are, you know from what I've just said, that we are gearing up for a world beyond newspapers to make sure that journalism still exists in the West Midlands, and whoever we can bring along with us on that journey would be more than welcome in our arc.
No, that's great, and look, that focus on really pushing the engagement with the whole community, the whole city, the business community, obviously the chamber community is really, really welcome, because I think to the point around the piece and the Observer, ultimately we all play a role, don't we? And that's in really making this place as great as it can possibly be to work, rest and play, and to then keep spreading the message out.
Paul, can I say a final thing that I can't believe I haven't mentioned at some point today? Business Live. Business Live is our B2B arm. So we made a decision a couple of years ago to recognise that B2B is a different thing digitally, and that, you know, if you're an operation that has a B2B focus, that a lot of the things that we do in Business Live are probably slightly irrelevant to you. So there is a B2B option in what we do. It's a network up and down the country. So we effectively cover local business up and down the country through one website, which is Business Live. We have a reporter locally, Tamlin Jones. We have 3 in the West Midlands. So if some of the things we do in Birmingham Live, someone don't seem like they're for you, often we'd probably agree, and Business Live is also there for you. Sorry, thank you.
That's in effect the digital home of the Birmingham Post, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, in many ways, like I say,
the broader network.
Yeah, B2B. If it's more important who your audience is and the scale of them, then sometimes Business Live rather than Birmingham Live would be the place.
Great. Well, Graeme, thank you for joining us. Thank you for as you say, answering so many questions, and hopefully people found that really interesting and insightful, and a bit of a glimpse into what goes on in the modern digital newsroom, and the thinking behind that you have and the team there around where you want to take the titles, and that commitment to the city and to the region, which is absolutely essential. So thank you for joining us. I guess we had one Bromwich, or you had one Bromwich for Christmas. It might even be a win for West Brom, mightn't it, before Christmas? But let's see what we can do here. We can't work with
let's not go that far. We can't. I think that might potentially be a step too far. But thank you for having me.
Thank you, Graeme. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you've enjoyed that. If there's any follow-ups, as I say, then Graeme, Mark, the whole Reach team are members. So speak to your relationship manager, reach out to myself, and we can connect you up. Okay, great. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks all.